Hi everyone, Stepan here. I'm going to show you my round 4 game from the Bošnjaci Open. I faced a low-rated player, about 1700, and I had the black pieces. I had no idea what he was going to do. So white plays d4. I went d5, c4, c6, knight f3, knight f6, and my opponent played g3. And there are two ways to play this position. You can play bishop f5, because on cd, queen b3, there is queen c8, and you have a tempo on the bishop, so there is no time to do anything aggressive on b7 or on the diagonal or with knight e5. But I've decided to go the other way and just go for a closed Catalan with e6. I'm comfortable with these positions, I know them pretty well. So I played e6. My bishop isn't on f5, but I also don't have all the usual problems connected with the early bishop f5. Okay, bishop g2, knight bd7, castles, bishop d6. This is all just mainline stuff played thousands of times. Knight c3, castles, and black has a problem in the closed Catalan, which is a problem you often see in this triangle pawn structure you get from the Caro-Kann, Colli system, Slav, semi-Slav, Queen's Gambit declined, this bishop. And there are two ways to sort the bishop out. One of them is to go e5, the other one is to go b6. You have to play one of those moves. And the main issue connected with the move e5 is that often white is able to play cd, isolating your d-pawn and getting the b5 square for the knight. So if you imagined e5 here, then cd, knight b5, the bishop has to go to b8, and then it gets slightly uncomfortable. So rook e8. I'm playing for e5. Rook d1 is still the main move, I think. I should say I have not engine checked the game. As I do with all of my games, we are going to check it with the engine at the end of the video. And one more thing, there is a position I'm going to play out against Nocti, because I'm still struggling to understand whether I'd made the right decision. I wonder what you guys will say, but we will see it a bit later on. So rook d1 is opposite my queen, so queen e7. This is a double purpose move. Playing for e5 and avoiding any tricks down the d file has to be good. And my opponent surprised me here with bishop g5. This is the first move I really didn't know. It's clear that white should play for e4. And, you know, you go e4, break the center, and continue from there. But bishop g5 is strange. h6, and my opponent takes. And now again, e4. And I almost wrote it down on the score sheet when my opponent took the e-pawn, but then he played e3, which is very, very strange. It explains bishop g5, didn't want to close down the structure before e3, but e4 is the most natural move. And positions like these I've had a million times. Takes, knight takes, queen takes, and c5. And now I've broken the center, probably dc, bishop c. I have a good bishop pair because my opponent traded. This shouldn't have happened. They still should have had the bishop on c1. And eventually I'm going to slowly prepare rook b8, bishop d7, bishop c6, or rook b8, b6, bishop b7, and have two very good bishops. The compensation for white is that they have a 3-2 pawn majority in exchange for the bishop pair. Usually white just has a 3-2 pawn majority and black doesn't have a bishop pair, so this is slightly favorable compared to the normal lines after e4. But my opponent played e3, and I didn't really know what to do here, but I'm going to develop my bishop. e5 isn't really necessary when the center is so safe. I suppose my opponent shouldn't go e4 after e3, so I played b6, which has to be reasonable at least. a3, and the only reason to play a3 is if you're gonna go b4, so probably my opponent plays b4. I couldn't decide between bishop a6 and bishop b7, but I played bishop b7 because it's safer. My opponent took on d5, and of course I take with the e-pawn. All of my pieces are lined up on the e-file, and I have excellent control over e4, and my opponent played b4. And now I had a choice. either to clarify the situation on the queen side and put pressure on the b pawn, which seems like a very good idea, or continue developing and prepare c5. I've decided to go for the latter, but when I was analyzing this position at home, I realized that the immediate b5, so preventing knight a4, knight c5, the usual tricks, has to be really good, because I can go a5 next, and let's say knight d2. This is just a move that I suppose white could play. I go a5. And now the b pawn is hanging. You are going to play knight b3, knight c5, but not really, you're not in time. If I don't do anything, you're going to do that, but after a5, you don't have time for knight b3 because I just win a pawn. So when you take, I take bishop a3, and once again, I'm about to win a pawn. My structure is ugly, my bishop is bad, sure, but I'm up a pawn. So I should have done that. Instead I played rook a d8, which isn't bad, I just think b5 is better. Queen b3, and again, I think I should have gone b5 here. But I played a6 because I saw an interesting line where I delay b5 and prepare c5. I wanted to justify rook a d8. And I think my next move is a pretty bad move, a6. And the reason I played a6 is firstly to prevent b5 in any situation. And on knight a4, which is clear, it's clear that that's the best move, I had a plan. I wanted to start a kingside attack, so I wanted to use this misplaced knight as a beginning of my attack. So my plan was knight d7, defending the pawn, and then eventually breaking the structure with g5, f5, f4. Because I have this bishop, this one can come to c8, the queen can come in, the rooks can come in, so that seemed interesting. That being said, I should have gone b5 instead of a6, in hindsight. Bishop h3, trying to remove the defender of the b pawn, so I just defended the b pawn. If my opponent takes the knight, I'd be really happy. Rook a c1, the c pawn is defended, and now I finally did play b5. Because I saw that neither capture was really good for white. The knight has to come into c5. If the knight moves back somewhere, let's say knight c3, then, I mean, why did white go in for this? I can again go a5, and it seems pretty good to me. So on b5, knight c5, as expected, I have to take. And now if b takes, then I have a passed pawn on the queen side. Long term, I go a5, and eventually one of these pawns is going to be a passed pawn. If dc5, then I have more control over the center. The knight gets the d4 square, but I don't think it should venture out too far. Because of queen f6, let's say knight d4, I can go rook e4, I can go bishop e5, and it seems like white's pieces are misplaced on the queen side and that I'll have a big attack coming up. After something like bishop c8 in the future, exchanging the light squared bishop, or if it retreats, just bishop c8, h5, h4 seems very promising. And of course the most obvious is rook c5. And as soon as my opponent played rook c5, I found a trick in this position that may just work in the future. It did work in the future. And what you're about to see in the next 5 moves is one of the weirdest things I've ever done during a game, in over 400 games I've played. So, since the rook is on c5, it can always be used as a tempo gain by the bishop, bishop b6. And the pawn on d4 may just hang if the back rank is weak, especially if my bishop is on c8. So there are some tricks connected with the d4 pawn. So first of all, I played queen f6, and my plan was to double up my rooks on the e file to set up this sacrifice, where on ed4, I could have rook e1 mate, I could win material if there's something on e1, and the queen is just good on f6, it puts pressure on the knight and forces white to react. So my opponent played bishop g2, and this is exactly what I'd hoped for, because now I have bishop c8 if the rooks aren't doubled up, and also the king is sort of stuck now. Bishop f1 is the only response to rook e1 check. So I just continued with my plan. Rook e7, rook dc1, rook d8. And in this position, My opponent played knight e1, fell for my trap, because bishop b6 wins material now, and in about 1 second, I played h5. As soon as I played h5, I looked at the board again and realized that he did play knight e1, exactly the trick I was hoping for, and I felt sick. I just couldn't understand why I've been preparing this tactic for 4 moves and I didn't play it. After the game, I told my opponent, did you realize that I had bishop b6 on knight e1? He said, what does that do? And I said, well, I win material because if you retreat the rook, I take on d4, the knight's hanging. He said, no, I didn't see it. So let me just show you. It's a 1500 rated tactic, bishop b6. And I think the best move could be to just hang the exchange, because at least you keep the structure closed. If you move the rook back, then I just take. And if you take, it's a disaster, a complete disaster. You have to go bishop f1, and now I go bishop c8. Seems absolutely losing. I don't know what to say about this. This is just, I know what bishop b6 wins material. Whether it's winning or not, I would say it could be. In any case, I played h5. And the worst part is, not only that I'd missed my own tactic, but that I'd completely missed that my opponent can play bishop takes d5 here. That's the worst part. Not only did I not win material with the bishop, but I left it hanging on c7, and my opponent had bishop takes d5. And now I have to go for a Desperado move, bishop takes g3. And I don't like this structure at all. Everything's weak, my bishop is absurd. And I don't have enough of an attack. Okay, h4 is coming, but the knight's going to be defending. If the f-pawn moves, something can defend from the second rank. My opponent didn't play it, luckily. He played rook c3. And, well, not luckily, he played rook c3, preventing bishop b6. I was kind of hoping that, you know, the tactic would still be there. So I played h4. Knight f3. Now nothing's hanging on the first rank, and I had a long think here whether to go h3 or take. I think playing h3 is better. Long term, it sets up tricks, but I can also just lose the pawn once the knight moves, so I decided to trade and came up with a plan of opening up, now that the h-file is open, getting my rooks to the h-file and mating on h1 or h2. So g6. Queen d1. I'm not sure what queen d1 does. It defends the knight, maybe prepares bishop h3 or bishop f1, but it's not that great. King g7, I want to go rook h8. Knight d2, rook h8. Queen f3. And at some point in the last 3 or 4 moves, my opponent offered the draw and I declined. I don't remember which move exactly. Wait, I can actually check. My opponent offered a draw. Where is it? On bishop g2. Move 22, bishop g2. 8 moves ago. So I declined the queen trade, played queen g5. And I may have queen h5 or queen h6. I may have rook e6, rook f6. It seemed like I have a very good position. I wouldn't say black is better, but I would always take black here. Knight f1, defending h2 in advance. Rook e6, I want to go rook f6. Knight h2. And now I was kind of afraid of queen g4. I didn't want to allow queen g4. Also rook e6 defends c6, so my pawn is safe. I didn't want to allow queen g4 and the queen trade, so I made the risky decision to go f5. Whether f5 is good or bad, it's probably bad positionally. I mean, it's definitely bad positionally because my king is unsafe. But I'm at least preventing the most annoying way to defend. And my plan was to go queen f6, g5, queen h6, queen h5 or queen h7, and rook h6, and triple up on the h-file that way. Even if it hangs the f-pawn, it should be deadly. So my opponent played knight f1. I played queen f6, okay? He played queen d1, and I played a move that loses material in such a simple way. I mean, it's just a beginner's tactic. And I'm going to be honest, I have completely missed bishop takes d5. Both here and in the previous position where it didn't win material, but it still worked. My bishop is hanging on c7, so I need to play bishop b8. The bishop is constantly unsafe on c7. I needed to move this bishop away. I didn't. I played g5, and my opponent just took on d5. And now I'm losing. It's as simple as that, because my opponent's breaking through. c6 is still defended. My structure is ruined, and if I don't mate my opponent, it's going to be the end of the game. More importantly, of course, if I take, my opponent wins everything. So I went through d6. The bishop went back to g2. Now I saved my bishop. And the worst part is that this center may seem immobile, but it's perfectly mobile. e4, d5 is happening. And my opponent played knight d2. I played g4. I knew I was losing. I was trying to play for a win because my opponent's king isn't safe. Queen e2, queen h6. And as I said, my plan was either queen h5, rook h6, or queen h7, rook h6, or c5. But c5 doesn't work for the moment because the bishop on b7 is undefended. If I can trade the two bishops, c5 is a winning move. I think let's just make a random move for white. So if here, here, here. If I had this position and went c5, it's still not over. But it's very interesting. For example, takes, and takes here. This seems over. So that's what I was trying to set up. However, there are defenses here. If I go c5, my opponent can go e4, giving up a pawn. For this bishop, and misplacing my king, and then e4 is defended. And I'm not sure who's better. Also, if not e4, my opponent is able to go d5 in many positions. And there are also defenses with f3 and f4. So after queen h6, I wasn't really sure whether I had anything. My opponent played knight f1 and again offered a draw. For those of you who don't know the tournament rules, you are not allowed to offer a draw more than once. So if you want to be polite to your opponent, don't offer a draw after one of them was declined. Also, if you find yourself in a situation where your opponent offers multiple draws, you're allowed to call the arbiter and do something about it. I actually spoke to Vlatko, my friend, about that. He said you should have called the arbiter for instructive purposes. No, I mean, I never did that. I actually had a draw offered to me 4 times in one of the games, so I'm accustomed to that. But it shouldn't be done. It's not allowed and it's not polite. So at this point I had about half an hour on the clock. I knew I was losing, but I had decided to spend the remaining time I had to find a win, if there was one, or to accept the draw if I can't find it. I couldn't find it. So now I'm going to show you my ideas, and we're going to play out the most promising one against Nocti, but I'm going to set Nocti to my opponent's level. My opponent is about 1700, so I'll choose rook 1, I think, maybe even, probably rook 1. That should be about 1700 FIDE, 1800 FIDE. So my first idea, queen h5. There are a couple of defenses here. Either f3, which I think works, and when I take gf3, just queen f3. So offers a queen trade, I have nothing. Or queen h5, d5, very interesting, where if I take, a bunch of trades happen, and I don't think I have anything. Because there's always e4 or f3 in the end. I could go c5, but after bc5, bishop d5, of course, if my opponent takes the rook or the bishop, I take on g2 and win, but there is e4, unfortunately, so that doesn't work. On knight f1, the second idea is bishop a8, and again e4, just breaking the structure. I can take on d4, but that doesn't really matter. The rook can just retreat and the diagonal is blocked. If I go c5 straight away, then my opponent just takes the bishop, so that doesn't work. And what I think is the most promising idea after knight f1 is queen h7, because this way I get to triple up with my rook in front. And I think the only viable defenses are f3 and d5. If f3, gf3, queen f3, now at least the queen trade isn't offered, so I have some chances after rook h6. The king does have an escape square, but okay. And on queen h7, d5, sorry, not e4, d5, rook h6, there is f4, and or f3. So when I take gf3, once again, the king has an escape square. But I think this is the most promising line. My conclusion was that everything was losing, that I don't have anything. And maybe my opponent would have blundered. I don't know. We will never know. But we can know how someone of my opponent's strength would play against an attack like this. So let's test queen h7 against Nocti, and we will get back to the game. Okay, let's test out queen h7 against Nocti. I'm going to set it up as a theme on Nocti. Nocti is what I do to practice positions I'd messed up during my tournament games and my training games before I turn on the engine. So let's create a theme. We'll call this theme Radic, because that's what my opponent's name is. Okay, scenario name, queen h7. Queen h7, I want to play as black, and I think we go for bishop 4 or rook 1. So let's go for bishop 4. I think that's about 1700. So let's do that, save the theme, and let's practice. Okay, so we're going queen h7. Now let's see how Nocti defends. Will it play f3, oh, queen c2? Oh, if my I mean, queen c2, okay. Very suspicious, but let's see what the idea is. f3 or f4 now surely has to be played. Oh, come on. Okay, maybe the difficulty was too low. Okay, now let's let's do it again. Where is Mr. Radic? Here. So can I? Okay, I'll have to add another element with a different difficulty. Radic. Let's add another element. Radic difficult. Okay, let's go rook 1. I think that's probably more to the point. So let's try queen h7 again. Again queen c2? f3 or f4 is the only way to prevent mate. Yep. And now here's the problem. Okay, so this is a likely position. So let's take. I don't think I'm winning the queen. So rook h1, bishop h1, queen h1, king f2. And what am I supposed to do there? I have no idea. I have no idea. Maybe I can play c5 at some point. Wait, let's try. I mean, the king can just go to f2 anyway. Yeah. I wish I had a rook there and not the queen. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can do now. Let's try bishop c7. Ooh, that's a blunder. That's a blunder. Yeah, I don't think I have anything here. Yeah. Okay, let's pick up a pawn, at least give up the exchange. Yeah, no, there's queen g2. No, there isn't queen g2. Rook h2. Yeah, queen g2. Rook h2 isn't a pin. Okay, I'm resigning. Oh no. Okay, so it's very likely that my opponent would have played f4. I don't think I have anything there, so I think we call it a day here. I think it's good that I accepted the draw. Let's go back. Okay, so yeah, you saw what happened there. Now so obviously I accepted the draw. I didn't want the risk, so now let's check the game with the engine. Okay, it says what, plus 1.1? Okay. So a good decision. Let's go from the beginning. So this is the first position that I didn't know. Let's turn on the engine. h6, bishop takes, okay, knight takes, e4 had to be best, but my opponent played e3. b6 is fine. a3 is weird. Bishop b7 is fine. cd, ed is best. Black has a small advantage. b4, yeah, I should have gone b5. Queen b3, a6 is a mistake. I again should have gone b5, I think. Yeah, works. But it's only plus 0.2. Knight d7, bishop h3, bishop c7 is fine. Rook ac1. b5 is good once again. Takes. Oh, the engine takes with the d pawn. Okay. I was expecting that rook c5 was best, but it's all about equal. Queen f6 equal. Bishop g2. Rook e7. Rook e7 is a mistake. Should have gone bishop d6, chasing the rook away and playing a5. Okay. Here, g5, but I played here. And knight e1. Oh, minus 0.6 only? Okay, because the engine gives up the exchange. Yep. Okay, instead I played h5, and now bishop d5 of course works. Oh my god, I missed two tactics with a single move. Rook c3, h4. Here, yeah, h3 was better, but hg3 isn't bad. g6 is good, king g7 is good. a5 makes sense, but rook h8 is fine. Queen g5 is good. Rook e6 is good. a5. I played f5. Okay, goes from 0.7 to equal. But I think from a human perspective, f5 is understandable. Knight f1. Queen f6, queen d1. And yeah, now let's see how bad g5 was. I bet it's plus 2 for white. I should have just moved my bishop. Plus 1.5. Yeah. Okay, bishop g2. I played bishop b6. Knight d2. g4 plus 2. Queen e2, queen h6, and knight f1 plus 1.1. Okay, let's see. Okay, the engine thinks queen h7 is best, so let's see what the best defense is. Yeah, d5. d5 or f4 or f3. I think f3 or f4 make the most sense. So takes, queen takes. Yeah, I don't think I have anything here. Well, the engine agrees. I can play rook g6 maybe and bishop c7. I haven't considered that. Yeah, okay. So it was wise to accept the draw. Okay, you will see the rest of my games in the following days. This was a well-deserved draw because I'd missed my winning chance and then also blundered into a losing position. I got away with the draw. You could also say that. I wouldn't have deserved the win. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. Bye-bye.